Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to our Village Partnership Initiative public meeting. My name is Jacob Grant. I'm the town manager for the town of Pittsfield. I want to thank you for being here in attendance with us tonight. This project truly is an exciting project that the town has been talking about for a number of years now. And over the last year and a half is when we've really started to kind of put our boots on the ground and get to work with it. So tonight we have Don Edinger with Goral Palmer in attendance with us. We have Nick Aceto from Aceto Landscape Architects. We have Jared Gillette and Randy Barrows from Maine DOT, all of which are going to present various topics to you tonight. There is a sign-in sheet going around somewhere, if you wouldn't mind signing that as it comes to you. And I'm going to turn it over to Don, who's going to kind of take it from here. Maybe Jared.
Yeah, good evening. I'm going to turn it over to Jared first, and I'll be back.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm Jared Gillette. I'm the Region 4 and 5 Transportation Planner with DOT and Tribal Liaison. And for Department of Transportation, I'm the project manager. Just going to explain a little bit about what this program is, the process, the philosophy behind it, and sort of the next steps going forward. Really the idea of the Village Partnership Initiative is based in the community-based initiatives within the Department of Transportation. And this is a vision of our current commissioner, Bruce Van Mill, which is, you know, our state highways in the state of Maine, contrary to what you may think, are pretty good, and we can get you from A to B fairly efficiently and safely. But what we want you to do is, when you get to B, have a reason to get out of your car and drop a buck. Really, that's what this is. This is an issue of, you know, reinvesting in the parts of the transportation system where we've not had the ability, as far as funding wise, to make those investments, which is our historic villages and downtowns. And this is based largely in the bipartisan infrastructure law, where the department is able to leverage up to 80% of the funding required to make these long-term investments in the transportation systems in, you know, our historic villages and downtowns and rural places. And the idea really is this is an opportunity for us to partner with the municipality, onboard a third-party consultant to come up with some unique ideas and visions for what the, you know, look, feel, and character, as well as the safety and efficiency of the municipality's transportation system can be, and then not have to spend a whole lot of money doing it. And honestly, without the bipartisan infrastructure law and the ability to leverage the federal fundings available right now, this is something that we would not have been able to have done. It's really a unique once-in-a-generation opportunity for us to make these long-term investments. And what's great about it is not only can we, you know, make investments with durable materials, we can also make investments that complement and enhance, you know, a historic community like Pittsfield's unique look, feel, and character. So this is really a process of using transportation investments as a means of also economic revitalization and really bringing back some of the stuff that we once had. You know, we want kids to be able to bike to school. We want people to be able to walk safely. We also want people to be able to get their sleds around, and I'm talking brat sleds, as well as their ATVs and their cars. Now, this is a multimodal state, and as things change, we also need to consider the Amish population and having a system that can accommodate all of that, as well as looking good and being durable, so that I never have to come back. Although I do really like Pittsfield, just FYI. So it's a unique opportunity. It is a once in a generation thing. I never thought that I'd be, you know, coming around rural Maine, being able to work with communities and actually making these investments. I'm originally from Calais, also grew up in the county for a while. So this is a real treat and a pleasure for me to work with small towns and say, hey, we can actually have a shot to do it this time. So thank you very much. That's all I got. And if there's questions, you know, about process and stuff, will come up. We'll talk more about that later. This is the first step in a very long process. You know, right now we're at the conceptual and feasibility. Everything you see here is just really a thought experiment. This is not yet to be built. The next stage will be preliminary engineering. That's where we'll work with the consultant. There's a match structure in that as well to get it to about 90% design, and then we will go after federal discretionary grants, whether it's a raised grant, congressionally designated spending, or other available federal sources to actually build it. So from now until built, we're probably looking at a timeline of 3 to 4 years. So that's the process. That's everything. I'll move on.
Thank you, Jared. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Don Ettinger. I work for a company called Laurel Palmer. I'm a principal in that firm and a former resident of the town of Pittsfield. So I'm excited to be back here. I'd like to thank MCI for hosting tonight's public meeting in the old gym. And so I have a presentation to go through. It's about 45 slides, so it's going to take a little while to go through, but I'll try to be as efficient as I can. I'd ask people to hold on questions until we can get through the presentation, but if you're dying to ask away, we'll pause. We'll do our best to get through it. Hopefully it'll be informative, but we're here tonight to present, as Jared said, some initial ideas on some infrastructure improvements in your community. It's pretty robust. It's transformative. It's the entire limits of a lot of your downtown. And so it's the first step in a long process, but it's a very exciting process. And hopefully you guys will feel that way too at the end of tonight's meeting. So with that said, I'm going to jump into the slideshow. There is a sign-in sheet rotating around. So if you could sign in, hand it to your neighbor, that would be fantastic. All right, this is the study team. So I think Jacob already introduced us. So we have Nick Aceto here from Aceto Landscape Architects. He'll be joining me in the presentation, talking about some of the softer side of what we're proposing. We have two clients here, the municipality and of Pittsfield and the Maine DOT. I think they've jointly funded this planning study, but our contract is with your town. So we're contracted directly with the town of Pittsfield on this assignment. All right, so let's talk about the study limits first. The graphic here on the left or on the right, in the red box is our study limits. So your downtown is here, Mill Pond is the blue, Sebastian River runs through here. This green is Manson Park. MCI is over here where we are today. So our limits start, it's basically Main Street. So it's Route 11 and 100, kind of starts down by the Industrial Park Road. I think officially it's named Stetson Street, but it's where Forrest's Garage is, the former mobile garage. It starts down there and it extends to the north. We go up to Peltoma where MCI is. We go down the hill to the railroad tracks. We continue through your town center. We pass Mill Pond where the Puritan factory is. We head all the way up to Madawaska Ave. And then we bang a right. We head up Grove Hill, I think it's called, all the way up to the hospital. So it's 2 miles in length. It's a big project. I would also say, you'll see as we go through our presentation, we'd like to say when we do these types of planning studies that anything within 5-minute walking distance of that corridor is in play. So you're going to see a handful of streets cycling in the area where we're making some safety or pedestrian improvements. All right, study scope. So this is a transportation planning study. So we want to make sure we remember that throughout the presentation. Since we're looking to get funding from Maine DOT and from the federal government as it relates to transportation, our focus of our effort needs to be on transportation items. That doesn't mean it's just vehicle, cars and trucks. We're looking at pedestrians and bicycles, active transportation. So these bulletized lists here are some of the things that we look at when we do these transportation planning studies. Can we make improvements to the corridor from a safety standpoint? Accessibility for all modes. Can we make it more accessible for bikes and peds? Pedestrians, placemaking opportunities. What is placemaking opportunity? It's if you see a photo of a certain location, you immediately know it's the town of Pittsfield. Founders Hall here at MCI from Main Street, pretty easy as a placemaking item. So we're looking to create some additional placemaking opportunities. Traffic calming. This study will look at traffic calming. Whether you're coming from the north and Newport, coming down Grove Hill by the hospital, excessive speeds coming into town in that direction, or coming from the south, we're looking to create infrastructure that will slow speeds down coming into your community. Pedestrian connectivity, that's stands for itself. Review access management. You may have some locations, some properties that have an open paved area, maybe a business or a residential property. And if it's wide open pavement, vehicles can circulate in and out wherever they want. We look to access that, to provide management of that access a little better, to reduce those openings. Why do we do that? It reduces the conflict points between those vehicles entering and exiting the business and pedestrians and bicycles that might be walking on the corridor or driving. We're going to be looking at pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, lighting, landscaping, wayfinding, and street amenities. So that's a mouthful, but it's really the softer side of our design elements when we look at infrastructure improvements. Many times when we do a transportation project for DOT, there's very little budget allocated for those items. But usually what's left over in the budget will be allocated there. On these types of planning studies, it's a different approach. It's really important for us when we do these projects to make sure it's aesthetically pleasing and complements your community and your historic landmarks. Landscaping and lighting and street amenities, benches, things like that are all in play for what we present tonight. And why do we do all this? So we're doing these transportation improvements. Why are we doing this? The ultimate goal here is to spur economic development in your community. We all know your downtown area. Remember the movie theater? It's closed. Rennie's was there. A lot of businesses have moved closer to the interstate or moved off of Main Street. So can we create and build some infrastructure here that will encourage businesses to come back? The ultimate goal in these types of planning studies is to create a community where people live, work, and play in the same community. So that's our goal with this project. All right, you thought the last slide had a lot of text? There's a lot of text on this one. So this is an important slide. It's our purpose and need statement. Anytime we do a planning study like this, we have to identify a purpose and need statement. Why do we do that? Well, when we come up with recommendations at the end of the report, we want to make sure that those recommendations best meet the purpose and need. So if we have multiple options in play, which one best meets this purpose and need statement? So I will read this to you. I apologize for the length of it, but the purpose of this study along Main Street and within reasonable walking distance of the downtown Pittsfield area from Stenson Street down by Industrial Park all the way up to the Detroit town line is to identify a range of implementable alternatives to improve safety, connectivity, accessibility, and placemaking for all modes of transportation. That's not just vehicles and trucks, but pedestrians and bicycles. We want to do that both now and into the future. While we do that, we want to make sure we have acceptable levels of service for our vehicles and good vehicle mobility. Transportation improvements should encourage and foster economic and land use development, as I mentioned earlier. The needs of this study include improving safety through the downtown area and along the Main Street corridor, controlling excessive speeds, entering town, providing better connectivity between your schools, your parks, which you have a lot of parks, and you have a lot of schools that are not near each other, and your natural resources. You also have a lot of natural resources in your community. And the public spaces that are within walking distance of the study area. We are going to make improvements to geometry at key intersections, and we're providing for improved access management through the corridor. So similar to the bullets in the previous slide, but more in a paragraph format. All right, Jacob had mentioned that we've been ongoing for about 1.5 years, and I think that's pretty accurate. What have we been doing during that time? We kicked off the project in March of last year, did a site visit last summer. We've been working on concepts last fall, had a variety of stakeholder meetings, including residents in town, town officials, key stakeholders, including MCI in the fall of last year. We had Main Street, so there's a advisory committee for this project, the Main Street Committee. They were formed to kind of look at improvements to the Main Street corridor. So we've met with them 3 times now, February and March. When we met with them in February, we had so much information to present. I think we did a 3.5 hour long meeting and didn't get through the whole project. So we scheduled the next meeting in March. We presented this to council in June and then followed up with the Main Street Committee again in June. Public meetings tonight. From here, we continue to make revisions. We'll ultimately work on recommendations. We may have other committee meetings, and we're open to develop draft and final reports later this year into the fall. All right, a few more slides before we get into our concepts. So we did do a safety review through the corridor. We did look for high crash locations. There are none, which is great. The definition of a high crash location is 8 or more crashes in a 3-year period in a critical rate factor of 1.0 or better. very mathematical. It's a DOT calculation where they compare the crashes at these intersections with crashes across the state, look at the severity of the accidents and the type of accidents. So good news is in this Main Street corridor, there are no high crash locations. We also took a look at a 10-year back window. We identified 3 locations where we saw a higher number of crashes, even though they weren't high crash locations. To our surprise, up at Dogtown Road, up by the hospital, there were a higher number of crashes up there. We attribute that to the higher speeds coming from Newport into town and then introducing a lot of side streets near the hospital, people turning in and out in those side streets and at the hospital. So that jumped out at us. Somerset Ave, the intersection with Main Street downtown. There may be a geometric issue going on there between Somerset Ave and Easy Street. They're not well aligned, and that may contribute to some of the crashes. And then Madawaska Ave. You guys are familiar with Madawaska Ave, the split, very dangerous layout. It's something that you'll see we're recommending geometric improvements there. So as we looked at our site visit and a safety audit, again, access management, vehicle speeds, traffic calming, and pedestrian accommodations. Those are things that jumped out at us in that review, and you'll see our recommendations, our draft recommendations are looking to address those. Okay, now we've got through the upfront slides, we can jump into our concepts. And so what we're presenting here on the screen are also the same that you see on the wall here. So after the meeting, you're welcome to come up and take a look at any areas. It starts South Main Street, starts on that slide there. We work all the way through heading to the north on Main Street. It ends the first slide over there. We have Peltoma Ave. We have, I'll say, MCI campus. And then over here, we have the entrance into Manson Park, as well as Sebastopol Street. So, so you'll see a list of streets here. While our focus is Main Street, we're actually touching Peltoma Ave, Stenson, Nichols, Clancy, Library, Crosby, and Sebastopol. Pretty robust. We'll try to go through those as quickly as possible. All right, so this is a big picture slide. Nick, I don't know if you're ready, but this is a slide Nick put together from a planning study perspective. I'd like him to speak to it.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Nick Cito with the Cito Landscape Architects. I'm going to share a few of these slides with Dawn as we kind of work through. So just to keep it kind of brief, I'm the landscape architect on the project, and I'm really here to focus on placemaking. So where Dawn and his team is focused more on the roadway corridor and making those physical structural engineering improvements. We are looking at adjacent land uses along the entire corridor. We're also looking at opportunities for placemaking, as Dawn described. And what is placemaking? Placemaking, as Dawn mentioned, is in a nutshell a way that if you took a photo of town and you kind of shared it on Instagram or social media, for example, someone might see it and immediately know that's Pittsfield, that's the place. So to focus back on this this map. So the different colors here that you're seeing, we are again looking at adjacent land uses along the corridor. The green down to the south is Manson Park. The orange is kind of that downtown corridor. So really the study area focuses on the downtown core. And then you see MCI campus, the purple up to the upper left there. The corridor kind of runs across the page left to right. And then you see these purple circled areas kind of along that corridor, the magenta circles. And those are gateway treatments, or sometimes in kind of the urban design, urban planning world, we call them nodes. And really what they are is they're opportunities to both incorporate some traffic calming to slow down vehicles, because that's the purpose of the study, partially to slow down vehicles and improve safety downtown and along the corridor. But those are also opportunities to incorporate placemaking. And those elements we'll kind of look at as we go through some of the slides coming up, some sketches that we did. But essentially that's opportunity for the town to kind of express its identity and signify these reduced travel speeds as you kind of enter downtown. So we'll talk about those a bit more shortly.
Thank you. All right, this first slide is not an exciting slide at all. It's our typical cross section. So it'd be a roadway cross section. It's too small for you guys to see, but just a couple of notes. Our roadway footprint, for the most part, we're going to be recommending 11-foot travel lanes in each direction, consistent to what you have out there today. The shoulder width, the paved shoulder widths may vary. We're gonna start on the outside of town with 5-foot shoulders. As we get into more of the town center, we're gonna narrow it to 3-foot shoulders. And then when we get into downtown with parking, we'll go back to 8-foot shoulders. So we are proposing curbing throughout the project. So it's gonna be granite curbing is what we're proposing to start. If there are funding issues and the like, we may look at maybe more of a concrete curb, which is what you have in spots on Main Street. But we want to start with granite curbing, it's the most durable. We're going to be proposing more than likely esplanades, they're green space or green strips between the road and the sidewalks. And we're going to be proposing paved sidewalks on both sides of the street. Sidewalk width can vary from 5 feet. You'll see sections what we call a paved pathway, those will be 10 feet wide. So the other thing worth noting is this Main Street corridor, when it was built years ago, it was built with a concrete slab. So it's got underneath it is a concrete slab. It's still there today for most of Main Street, except for your very downtown. I think from the railroad tracks to Somerset Ave, I think the slab was removed in the 70s, but it's there for the remainder of it. And coordinating with the town officials and utility districts, they'd like that slab removed. Makes it easier to get access to those utilities underneath the road in the future. So the recommendations of our study will be to remove the concrete slab from the project. All right, so these slides here, sure, yeah, I think it looks pretty similar to my screen. So these slides here, these are going to be what we call cut sheets. We're going to work our way from South Main Street down by Fofo's Garage and work our way to the north. And in terms of what you're looking at here, I'll try to use my laser pointer in red here. So Main Street is going to be running left and right on your screen. This is Stetson Street or Industrial Park Road here. This is Forest Garage. Stenson. Yeah, I'm gonna mess that up all night. I apologize.
I thought you lived in town.
I did, and I keep getting that. I keep on calling it Stetson Street, so I apologize. I know. I live right on Summer Street, so not Somerset Ave. So in terms of the colors that you see here, this light gray is going to be new pavement. The dark gray would represent sidewalks. The green would be grass or landscaping areas. So you'll see some red lines as well. Those are either property lines or right-of-way lines. So right-of-way would be the limits of public right-of-way for roadway purposes. So as we start the project from the south, you'll see we're introducing this island in the middle of the road. We call that a gateway treatment. So it's our first one. We'll have a series of 3 entering town from either direction. Why do we do that? Well, we want to inform the traveling public that they're entering a downtown slower speed area. We want them to reduce speeds. So it's basically a center island, it's a raised island with slope curbing, and they have landscaping in it. We'll support it with signage and striping. So the speed limit coming from the south is, I think, 35. Coming into this area, it stays 35 until you get to Bacardi Road, it drops to 25. So we're providing for some access management at the gas station here. The intersection with Stenson Street is staying about the same. However, we're introducing sidewalks from that street north. So we're introducing sidewalks on both sides of Main Street from I'll call it the Industrial Park Road into town. There's no sidewalk down at this location. I think the sidewalk stops on the MCI side and they stop near Richie's Pizza in that area. So we're proposing sidewalks on both sides. The white dashed line would be a crosswalk, so you'll see that. So, and then the bullets over here on the right, I'm not going to go into detail on them. I think you see some are faded and some are old. They'll change by slide, and it goes back to those standard bullets of safety, intersection improvements, bike and ped accommodations, traffic calming. So if this certain sheet checks those boxes, we made it bolder than the other slides. All right, as we continue further north, this is Rich's Pizza right here. This is Pittsfield Street here, and it looks like Chinquette Court here. Excuse me.
Raven Street has been purple.
What's it called?
Raven.
Which one's Raymond?
Chinquette Court.
Okay, where the old bowling alley is. Okay. All right, we'll make a note of that. The roadway section through here is going to be 11-foot lanes and 5-foot shoulders. So we're in the outskirts of town. We're proposing 5-foot shoulders for bicycles. So they'll be using the shoulders there. We have standards with sidewalks on both sides for pedestrians. As we continue further into town, McCarty Road is here. At the bottom of the hill here, we're introducing another gateway treatment. This is our second one. Our speed zone changes right here at the bottom of the hill from 35 to 25. So we thought it was a good location to introduce another gateway treatment to help reinforce slowing traffic down. As we start to come up the hill, you'll see that we have esplanades on both sides. So that's our grass strip separating the sidewalk from the road. But as we start coming up the hill on the right-hand side, we eliminated the grass strip. If you drive up the hill there, you'll notice there's a lot of mature trees near those old houses. We want to preserve those trees, so we're pulling the sidewalk in up against the road and utilize those trees for our landscaping. As we continue past Franklin Street, we continue that same theme of no esplanade. Let's utilize the nice trees that are here. And I say that theme would be consistent through all of Main Street. There are still a lot of mature trees through the corridor as we go towards the railroad tracks and the library, and through the next phases of the study. If there are trees that are worth saving block to block, that certainly would be looked at and recommended through the study. The theme continues up the hill. We're now approaching MCI, but this is Franklin Street. Again, similar theme, 5-foot shoulder sidewalks on both sides. All right, we get up to MCI. This is the front campus here. This is Peltoma Ave here, and this is Main Street left to right. So some changes that we're proposing here. First, the intersection with Peltoma Ave. We're proposing crosswalks on all 4 legs of it for pedestrians. Peltoma Ave, we'll talk about separate slides, but we are making pedestrian improvements on Peltoma Ave. We're actually proposing this to be a raised intersection. So what is that? That's, if you guys are familiar with a raised crosswalk or a speed table where the road picks up to sidewalk grade and the vehicles drive over. We're proposing that for the entire intersection here. That will slow traffic down at this location. But also, when we look at pedestrian heat maps, Strava maps, this is a pretty heavy pedestrian from campus down Peltoma Ave. So we want to make it as safe as we can for the pedestrians. The other change we're doing here is we reduce our shoulders from 5 feet to 3 feet here. So the bikes are no longer using the shoulders. They either can share the lane with vehicles, or we're introducing a 10-foot multi-use path on the MCI side. So bicyclists can use that path with pedestrians and families with strollers or walking their dog. So that 10-foot path will go all the way into town and head all the way out to Madawaska Ave. So it's through the entire downtown area. The other thing we're doing here, so that 10-foot path will be on the MCI side. Opposite MCI, there is no sidewalk. We're proposing to install a sidewalk through there with an esplanade. There are some great changes happening out here. We adjust those through the esplanade to come forward. Stenson Street is also located here. It runs through campus. It's a public road that runs right through the MCI campus and bisects MCI because of the alumni hall that's on one side of it. First Baptist Church is here. We'll talk about some of the recommendations for Stenson Street. But one of the things that we wanted to accentuate here on this project was connections of schools to public spaces. When I went to MCI, both our fall and spring sports were at Manson Park. So there was this constant connection between campus here and Manson Park. Now the fall sports are up behind campus, but the spring sports are still down at MCI. So we wanted to provide for good pedestrian connections with a multi-use trail from MCI campus to Manson Park, which you'll see in our graphics. We're continuing down Main Street. First Baptist Church is here. We have Nickel Street. You'll see there's a multi-use path proposed on Nickel, and it will actually go on Lancey Street as well in front of the Manson Park School. Our multi-use path also continues down on the MCI side towards the library. We continue the theme with 3-foot shoulders and the multi-use path on the west side. Sidewalk proposed on the east side, and for the most part, there might be one there today. So we build off of that and accentuate it. All right, we're continuing down. Now we're getting into your town center. This is the library here. Main Street is here. These are the railroad tracks right here. And the entrance to Manson Park is actually over here. You'll see we've actually shifted the entrance to the right or towards the railroad tracks. The idea behind that is twofold. First is providing for a 4-way intersection of Library Street as opposed to an offset intersection. So providing the connections there, we thought there was some value added there. The other is we did our site visit, one thing that jumped out at us is we kind of stood here in front of the library, kind of looked at the surrounding areas. As you know, as residents, Manson Park's a pretty special place, and it's pretty unique. Many communities have what you have here in Manson Park, but many people that drive through Main Street don't even know it's there. And so the idea being is that we can make it a little more visible for the folks that are driving through on Main Street. They might stop more and take a look around. If we can provide better connections to that park, people are more likely to stop maybe on Main Street and walk back down to the park, or park in the park and walk back up to Main Street. So that was kind of the theme behind it. It is on private property. You know, the old Ford garage is located here. The building is there. So obviously there would be some land acquisition that would need to happen for this design. But it was just, again, initial thought on this as to it might be a betterment, and we welcome public input. So we have some work proposed on Library Street as well. Some pedestrian improvements. We'll show that on a future slide. We get to the railroad tracks. So, I didn't mention, but we have our third gateway treatment right in front of the library. We end up having Nick will present a visual of what that might look like from a street view. But again, to let people know you're now entering the town village, the downtown area, we want to make sure you're well aware of. That's going to be a heavy pedestrian concentration. The railroad tracks themselves, when I was here, it was traffic calming. I think it still is traffic calming because it's so potholed that you have to slow down to go over it, or you can lose a bumper or a tie rod. So this design proposes improvements there. Proposing concrete panels to install around those tracks to make it much smoother and easier to drive over, with new signal equipment to match up with the new pedestrian improvements through this area. So then as we continue what I'll call your town center, basically from the railroad tracks up to Somerset Ave. The other observation we made is you have on-street parking in that downtown area in the southbound direction on the left side as you enter town from MCI. But there's no on-street parking on the right-hand side, so where Chimbrow headquarters isn't like. So we try to introduce some on-street parking in both directions. So if you're driving from the south, you want to stop at the restaurant or whatnot, you can pull over it and do that. So we're showing some on-street parking here. Those would be 8-foot wide parking stalls. We have a pretty robust pedestrian area in front of the buildings on the left, and Nick has got some visuals that he can share with us on that. So with that said, I think, yeah, the next slides will be next.
Yeah, so a couple of quick notes here. We have 2 slides here. This is the existing conditions, looking forward, approaching downtown at the railroad tracks, as the area Dawn was just describing, with the library on the left, Manson Park on the right, the existing street or driveway on the right-hand side coming in. And then kind of the after condition proposed with that center median to help slow down traffic a bit, pedestrian crosswalk there in the center, sidewalks on both sides of the street. Opportunity there for signage to help kind of signify to motorists that you're entering downtown. And again, providing some traffic calming as you're entering downtown, help kind of entice people out of their vehicles. We're also showing the driveway into, or the street rather, into Manson Park shifted further back in this view so that you can see down into Manson Park, a little bit of an unimpeded view. There's also opportunity here for benches, streetscape, banners, lighting, those things. And really, I just wanted to, at this point, point out that the purpose and value of this stuff, the planting, the streetscape, the esplanades, it's not just beautification, but actually provide safety and make those sidewalks more comfortable for pedestrians, for people who might live locally here in town and want to visit downtown without getting in their vehicle. Just takes a little more pressure off the roads and helps activate downtown and kind of feed the downtown businesses.
Yeah, so on the slide, Nick made a comment how it makes it more comfortable for pedestrians. It makes it less comfortable with vehicles when you have those street trees, those vertical elements on either side of the road. It's going to make it feel tighter for the vehicles and then encourage them to slow down. All right, we're continuing into Main Street. Nick is going to, after the slide, jump back with some more visuals. But so in terms of Main Street is left and right. This is Chimbrow headquarters here. This is Honeywell Ave. So let's talk about Honeywell Ave. It's a signalized intersection, a three-way signalized intersection. It's, as far as I can tell, it's been in blink mode where it doesn't flash red, yellow, green. It just flashes yellow and red on Honeywell Ave. It did that when I was here 30 years ago, so I'm not sure it's changed. Regardless, our team has done a signal warrant analysis, taking a look at the intersection to see it doesn't even warrant a traffic signal. It does not. In addition, there is a left turn movement coming down Main Street to turn left onto Honeywell Ave. Does it warrant a left turn movement? It does not. So our recommendations are going to be to remove that traffic signal and remove that left turn lane to allow our footprint to get a little smaller. It will be basically a three-way intersection with Main Street having the right of way and Honeywell Ave being a stop condition. As we continue up to the next intersection, this is Somerset Ave and Easy Street. You'll see we're proposing to realign Easy Street. An observation that we made through this area and feedback through stakeholder meetings is it didn't function very well because Easy Street is too far to the left and they get the same green signal as the folks coming down Somerset Ave. So we propose to shift Easy Street to better align the through movement with the receiving lane on Somerset Ave. Other than that, pedestrian improvements, recommendations on both sides of Main Street. There's some green space here that Nick is going to talk to in a second. Somerset Ave will stay signalized. There are multiple lanes on each approach. We'll, for now, are keeping those, but there probably will be some traffic analysis done sometime to confirm that the lanes are warranted. So with that said, I'll jump to the next few slides for Nick.
So these next 3 or 4 slides here focus really on the downtown core. The magenta area box that you see on the screen is kind of the area that we use to define the study for downtown. And we did a kind of a quick audit of what is downtown within that area, focused on parking and kind of infrastructure and transportation related elements. So within that box, just focused on parking, is about 150 parking spaces. And then if I go to the next slide here, this is a early concept sketch illustrating how with some reconfiguration of some of those back lots, we could get around, deliver around the same number of parking spaces, about 135 parking spaces, and then some opportunities for what we call infill. So those are, there's land essentially downtown within that block that could start to serve the purpose of housing, some other commercial uses, some amenities for downtown that could be built. So there's some efficiencies to be gained, I guess is kind of the lesson to be taken away from this concept. So again, here we have about 135 parking spaces. We're showing 20 homes, 3,000 additional square feet of commercial space and 20,000 square feet of additional public space. And you'll see a little bit more in detail in Don's plans, but along Main Street, we're proposing narrowing the travel lanes down a little bit, incorporating curb extensions, which help promote pedestrian activity on both sides of the street, and then widen sidewalks, street trees, planting, signage, lighting. I'll show you a sketch here in a second. But all elements that kind of help promote activity downtown and serve kind of economic vitality purposes. We did look at currently there's where you see these 2 red arrows. We've been in discussion with those property owners, and we've looked at vehicle circulation there. We may need to maintain as an alternative access in through that site. But the concept here that we're showing is the central town common, kind of opposite the Chinbro headquarters, and then infill development as I described in the last slide. So here's the existing condition from a street level view. And again, similar to the last kind of placemaking area, I'll show you kind of a before and after. So just kind of take this in, absorb it. I'm sure everyone is very familiar with downtown as it exists today. And then an after condition. So envisioning the idea of kind of infill development, working with existing building footprints, building up what we call the street wall. And so incorporating some mixed uses. There could be opportunity for living, office space, commercial space above, and all those those uses compatible with a downtown and kind of help bring, or you have a built-in market essentially for any downtown businesses. If people are living right there, provides activity along the street. And then as it relates directly to our transportation plans and roadway corridor, you can see, I'll just jump back here for a second. You can see the difference where we're pulling the curb lines in, still maintaining Federal Highway Administration best practice standard travel lanes, incorporating on-street parking. And by doing that, again, we're expanding the sidewalk space to really promote pedestrian activity and economic activity, incorporating street trees, banners, signage, seating, planters, just imagining this being a vibrant little block of downtown. That'll hand back to Don.
An interesting observation on your downtown right now. I think it was renovated maybe or reconstructed in the 1970s, maybe. But they have bump outs, they have different surface treatment types of pavers. They actually have underground utilities through your town village, which is unique, and many communities desire that. So somebody had the forethought some 50 years ago to do those things that communities still desire today. All right, we're going to continue north. So we're heading out of town. This is the Puritan factory here. Main Street's here, Mill Pond is here. So Sebasticook Street is over here. So as we continue out of town, the theme continues with a 10-foot paved sidewalk on the upper side. We transitioned to a normal sidewalk on the downstream side. And then we're introducing our first 3 gateway treatments as we are heading to the north. And then proposing a mid-block pedestrian crossing at that gateway treatment to provide for a safe crossing location. We have a couple of visual here in this area as well, which I'll let Nick discuss.
Yeah, so continuing out on the kind of the other opposite end of downtown at Sebasticook Ave and Mill Pond, there's an existing brick building here on the right. And this is another opportunity for a node or a gateway treatment, again, to kind of express the identity of your town with signage, with some enhanced streetscape elements, and incorporating some space for pedestrians and also access to the pond. I did take a walk down by here today before the meeting, and I noticed a lot of people, or a few people at least, were fishing off the bridge nearby here. So it seems like there's pretty good evidence that people would want some access to the pond for various reasons. So again, looking, kind of go back and forth, toggling here, but again, existing conditions, and then rough sketch of proposed conditions. So envisioning, again, sidewalks on both sides of the street. Again, those narrow travel lanes, the center median to slow down traffic and signify to motorists that you're coming into downtown, kind of help entice them out of their vehicles again, maybe stop here at the pavilion, maybe you rent a kayak, and maybe you can paddle up and down the Sebasticook or along Mill Pond here. There's also opportunities for signage, and in earlier concepts, we had envisioned potential for some alternative pedestrian connections, namely a river walk or some other trails that can connect. Again, offering some opportunity for pedestrians away from the Main Street corridor.
So now we're continuing north. Sebasticook Street is here. This is the visual that Nick just discussed. So we're continuing this direction. There is a bridge here, so there would need to be some bridge modifications. Structurally, we've kind of taken a high level look. It looks like the bridge is in pretty good shape. Not need a replacement anytime soon, but to fit our template, there would be some surface modifications that would need to happen on the bridge. But we continue the theme of the 10-foot path on the pond side, all the way up to Madawaska Ave. And then a normal sidewalk on this side. You'll see that we don't have esplanades here, so we haven't separated the paths from the road here with the green strip. It's just because we're really tight on space here. If you out there's guardrail on both sides. It's pretty tight, so we'd like to introduce the landscaping on the back side of the pedestrian space. So As we continue along, Station 58, Station 59, right in this area, you'll see down here, we have some text which says Maine DOT project. So while everything we've been talking about is associated with both the town and Maine DOT, it's a good time to pause and let folks know that if you've been following over the last few years, Maine DOT had a rehabilitation project plan for Route 11 for Main Street. For the entire limits we're discussing, they took that rehab design, it was heavily focused on the roadway, but there was some sidewalk improvements that were happening with that project. They took that design to about 75% complete. And then when they heard this project was starting up, they parked it, they put it on the shelf, and it's been sitting there for a year and a half. But what is important to know is that the funding for that project still exists. It's around $4 million of funding for the project. And so most recently in the last month or so, DOT has re-engaged the town to discuss how to implement or best use that $4 million. The vision we're presenting tonight is different than their original design. But they've looked at this and they feel that really from Madawaska Ave up to the hospital could be a candidate for use of that money. What does that mean? That means with support, that portion of this project that we're going to talk about in the next few slides, they could finish the design and right-of-way process in the next year. It could go to construction in 2026. So much quicker than what we're talking about for the rest of the project. So with that said, so in this area, we transitioned from 3 foot, we've had 3 foot shoulders all the way through town, multi-use path. We now transition back to 5 foot shoulders for a variety of reasons. Number one, we start to turn the corner and go up Grove Hill. It's going to be pretty steep, so we want to make sure we have shoulder space for bikes. They're going to need it. They're going to be going much slower than the vehicles on that hill. So we transition from 3 to 5 foot shoulders as we come into Madawaska Ave. Madawaska Ave currently is aligned like this. It's a straight shot onto Main Street, and then Route 11, 100 coming from the hospital does a sweep. So we want to change the geometry of Madawaska Ave and tee it in. So we'll be basically, there's an island out there. There's 3 roads, a little island in the middle of it. Imagine Madawaska Ave going right into the island, and that's where it will connect with Main Street. So it's a 3-way intersection, T intersection, stop condition for Madawaska Ave. So that's part of our recommendations to enhance and improve safety. And then as we continue around the corner and start to head up, I believe it's Grove Hill. The other feedback that we received is pedestrian accommodations up to the hospital is important. I've done some site visits and seen people walking down from the hospital. So we're proposing a sidewalk from Madawaska Ave all the way up to the hospital and a little bit beyond. The sidewalk will be on the south side. So as we continue around the corner, Madawaska Ave is over here. We start coming up. There's a plateau here before you hit the real steep hill where the animal clinic is. So in that plateau area, we're proposing our second gateway treatment. This also happens to coincide where our speed zone changes. So if you're coming from the hospital down the hill, you're supposed to be going 35 miles an hour, but you're not. When you get to this plateau, it drops to 25, and you're still not doing 25. So we want to try to reinforce that with another gateway treatment to let people know they need to be following the speeds. So we continue up the hill. It's 11-foot lanes. We have curbing and a sidewalk on the right going up the hill, separated by an esplanade. On the left-hand side, it's not going to be curved. We have a 4-foot shoulder, which will accommodate bikes, and an open ditch is what will be proposed through there. Also worth noting, I don't believe through this DOT section that they'll be removing the concrete slab. I don't think they have funding to remove the slab. So we continue up the hill. The animal clinic, I think, might be this parcel here. We're approaching the hospital now. Sidewalk on the right-hand side. Hospital is here. Sidewalk continues on the right-hand side up to Layton Street. So we'll extend the sidewalk at Layton Street, residential community down, and then they can have access to it. And then at the top of the hill, this is Dogtown Road. Detroit Town Line is just a little ways off the sheet. We're proposing our third final gateway treatment. Speed zone changes here from 50 miles an hour coming from Newport to 35 here. This is where we have the higher than normal accidents. So we want to reinforce it with another gateway treatment sign and tell folks to slow down. So that completes our Main Street corridor. We have some side streets. I'll talk briefly on those. The first one is Peltoma Ave. So this is MCI campus here, Peltoma Ave intersection here. So Peltoma Ave, as you go down the hill, there's a sidewalk on the left. There is no sidewalk on the right. There are no crosswalks. It's a residential neighborhood on both sides of Peltoma Ave. And so we're proposing the sidewalk on the left extends down to, don't know the street, but I call it the airport road, street to the airport. We're proposing doing the same on the right-hand side, extend the sidewalk down to the airport road. So you'll see that. Also at side street crossings, we're proposing crosswalks. So this is Summer Street, Lancy Street, we're proposing a crosswalk here. And then at each of the streets, Chester Street, a crosswalk, Chiquette Street, crosswalk, Nichols, and Estelle, maybe. And then this last street here is Harrison Street, which is the airport road. The other thing I'll note is every other crosswalk we're proposing as a raised crosswalk. So it's a speed table. We heard feedback that vehicles drive too fast on the street. Surprise, surprise. So we're introducing 3 raised crosswalks here that will force vehicles to slow down. Those residential area.
Are you showing esplanades on those sidewalks? In the
We are not. So no esplanades on Peltoma. There's none on the, as you head down the hill, there's no esplanades on the left. We're not showing it on the right. We could look at it, but it gets, if you look down in this slide here, those red lines are the right-of-way lines. It gets really tight. So I just don't think we have the real estate to put in the esplanades.
You're gonna have to move some poles too.
Correct. Yeah, it's a great comment. So we have overhead utility poles on a lot of these streets. Aside from your town center, we have overhead utilities. And so whatever we propose here, we will work with the utility companies to co-locate those utilities with our pedestrian accommodations and landscaping and ornamental lighting. We haven't talked much about it, but with these sidewalks, we want to propose pedestrian scale lighting. I think it will look really nice and it serves a purpose for pedestrians. All right, let's jump to Main Street. Let's jump to MCI campus. So we're actually sitting in this building right here, Parks Gym right now. Main Street is here, First Baptist Church is here, Alumni Hall is here. So Stenson Street is a public road that runs right through campus and bisects Alumni Hall from the rest of campus. There are pedestrian crossings here. Like the other streets, there are speed issues on this street too, with vehicles driving too fast through campus. So we've had numerous conversations with MCI staff, including the headmaster and trustees or board trustees. This is the current recommendation on the table where we're looking to realign Stenson Street. For those that don't know, MCI is, well, they lost a lot of their trees, right, to disease. And so I don't know if that was allowed them to kind of review their campus plan, but they've worked with other consultants over the years to develop some new campus master planning. They haven't made a final recommendation yet, but they're leaning on the front campus to maybe more of a horseshoe type roadway geometry. And so this mimics what that could be, where that horseshoe starts here and then continues around in a kind of a loop road and may serve one way through campus for the school buses. So we're currently showing that. We're showing a realignment of Stenson. We're showing a T intersection with the remainder of Stenson Street. This would be a 3-way stop in the current design, so force all vehicles to stop in both directions. The big add here is we're shifting the road away from the First Baptist Church and Alumni Hall, creating space for that multi-use trail with an esplanade. So we feel much better accommodations for pedestrians and for safety through this area. And then that theme continues to the backside of campus. So we're going to continue with pedestrian improvements on Stenson Street. There are no sidewalks there. I think there is a walkway on campus, but nothing along the road. And so when we get to Library Street, which is here, there is a crosswalk there today. We maintain a crosswalk. There's a sidewalk on Library. We maintain that crosswalk and propose a raised crosswalk, again, to slow traffic down. As you come down towards the back of campus, so here's Library Street with a raised crosswalk, maintain that multi-use trail to the ball fields. The idea is to connect from these ball fields to Manson Park ball fields. So we have that multi-use path there. You'll see we have strategically located crosswalks. There's a crosswalk here. Each of the crosswalks on Stenson Street is raised. So we want to slow traffic down going through through this area. The other thing that we're showing here, and again, it may not make the final plan, but it's something that was discussed at length with key stakeholders is the need for formalizing parking on campus, not just for the benefit of the school, but for the benefit of our community or your community. Today is a good example where events do take place that are town level events happening on campus. And I think that relationship between MCI and the town is strong, and they do that regularly. So as part of this plan, whether this is ends up being a public parking lot, a park and ride, a private lot with an easement, we don't know the details, but it's a gravel lot today, it's a gravel parking area today. It does fill up during sporting events. And so it may be other events as well. So there's just an opportunity here where we could formalize a parking lot, paved parking lot with better controlled access in and out of onto Stetson Street. So that's the tail end of it. The far end of the ball fields, and then you can see we have our last crosswalk where we connect our two multi-use paths. So much better pedestrian accommodations in and around those ball fields and much better parking accommodations. All right, a few more slides here for you. So this is, imagine Main Street's on the top of the page here. This is Nichols Street. I mentioned that multi-use path from MCI campus to Manson Park. So we're showing it run down Nichols and then running down Lancy Street. This is Manson Park School. And the public swimming pool is here. So that multi-use path will provide access to that area, but also continue all the way down to Crosby Street, which is the main entrance into the Manson Park. So this is the next slide where Lancy Street continues with that path. This graphic here, this is Manson Park down here. This is the relocated Crosby Street. So Crosby is currently over in this area. It's got the funny loop road here. We just formalized it into maybe a simple T intersection, three-way stop condition, maybe a raised intersection so everybody slows down here. But formalized, nice pedestrian access in and out, a lot of green space. Maybe there's parking here, parking bay. People have mentioned maybe a community center goes here. Currently, this is where people park for ATV riding and maybe snowmobile riding. So, but do we formalize that? But just an idea of thought. Does extend into the park a little bit, but then we terminate it there. We can terminate it sooner if there's a desire. All right, Library Street. So the library is where my cursor is. Main Street is here. Another observation we made is a lot of the students from MCI will walk down Library Street, and then they get to this corner here where the railroad tracks are, and they shoot across the railroad tracks. You can actually kind of see a pathway, maybe right in this area. Kind of wondered why they do it. Maybe it's the easiest point to get to downtown or Happenon Park. But we noticed there's no side, that's where the sidewalk ends today. There's a gap here from that point to Main Street. So we just want to provide a sidewalk to allow them to stay in the public way and not cross the railroad tracks illegally. All right, and then my last two slides here, we're on Sebastopol Street. Main Street is over here on the left. And then you come, there's a sidewalk on Sebastopol Street from Main Street. It runs along here. And then it gets you to Fenlo Park. There's a sidewalk on the Fenlo Park side as well. The thought process here is, are folks aware of potentially the new K-8 school going in? We don't know where it's going to be, but it could be where on the campus of Warsaw Victory. If it is, then people are not necessarily going to Manson Park anymore. The Sebastopol Street pedestrian connection might be a more prominent connection. So we thought we should close the gap. There is a missing piece of no sidewalk up near Harlan Ave. So basically from Bates Ave or even before Bates Ave, we run out of sidewalks. So just providing a sidewalk up to Harlan Ave and crosswalk across to get you to the sidewalk on Harlan Ave is the thought there. So again, within 5-minute walking distance. So so that completes the presentation. Apologize for taking as long as we did. There's a lot of content there. Hopefully it was informative. And at this point, I think we would open it up to questions and comments. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's a great question. So both the gateway treatments and the raised crosswalks and the raised intersections, how do you plow? How do you do winter maintenance? It is definitely doable. They do exist in other communities. It's probably an education that will need to happen with Public Works on how you do that. But yes, they can be done. They're designed so that they can have full winter maintenance. So we get that question also on the gateways because we're shifting traffic around and making it narrower. The idea is it should still be plowable. Yes, sir.
Most of this gateway is on the state road. DOT's the one that plows that. How are they gonna deal with it? Now, they're here, they can talk about it.
Yeah, and I don't know, I looked at Jacob and Donnie Shoot if he's in the audience, but I think this is a winter compact. Does that mean that you guys plow it? So the town actually plows, even though it's a state road, it's not an urban compact, but a winter compact.
Still bring them big plow right down through town.
Do they? Okay.
I mean, they may not be plowing, but they gotta come through.
Yeah, so what I would tell you is this design, this is the first phase, the planning phase. It's gonna go through a lot of scrutiny and a lot of other sets of eyes as we move, assuming the project moves forward. DOT will be heavily involved in the finalization of what the footprint looks like, where we do not do raised crosswalks or raised intersections. So the DOT's older policy, I'll say their current policy, they prohibit raised traffic, vertical traffic calming on arterials. So it might be prohibitive on Main Street, but they are becoming more lax in those policies and trying to be more open-minded about it. So they've told us to keep it in the design moving forward. We've had some other communities where we've proposed these and the solution might be, let's not put it in for now, let's build it without it. And then if we need to put it in after the fact, we can always put in a vertical crosswalk in the future if safety is a
I
concern.
can follow up, Don. Nothing that has been presented so far today is out of line with our state highway design guidelines or. Sorry. So nothing that has been presented here today is out of line with the state highway design guidelines, which we've, asked the consultants to, do everything within those frameworks, as well as these are what's called proven safety countermeasures from Federal Highway Administration. So it is feasible. We do have done these in other communities that do get a similar snow load and they are successful. And they do serve a dual purpose of one, having that gateway tourist announcement here in the town, and then also a traffic calming feature so that law enforcement can focus on other things as opposed to tracking down people speeding.
And the green area, the dark green area, why goes south? What does that indicate?
It's just a pretty picture. It doesn't indicate anything. So you're asking the question about this area right here. Is that on the screen up here, sir? You see where
Yeah.
this guy here, why it's a lot more green? It's just my CAD technician drew it that way. There's nothing behind it. In fact, as I look at it, if there's an access road here into a field, we probably maintain that road, which we're not showing, but we would maintain that. So yeah, it's just for visual purposes only. The idea is the green represents how we blend in the roadway work to people's front yards. But the limits of it would vary based on whatever final design we come up with. But in this area here, I do think that we probably are missing a driveway opening. So. Yes, ma'am.
How does that, is it actually raised with a person with where strollers and walkers and wheelchairs on that raised part?
Yeah, so the idea behind it, if you drive down the road and you have sidewalks, the sidewalks are typically elevated. They're 6 inches higher than the road surface. A raised crosswalk picks the crosswalk up 4 inches, so it gets it almost to the sidewalk grade. So you're almost at sidewalk height, and it forces the vehicles to go over a ramp up to the sidewalk and then a ramp down.
I didn't think that was actually a walkway across the road, or it was like in front or either side of it where.
It's the actual walkway itself. So the crosswalk where pedestrians will be the elevated part. It'll be about 10 feet wide. And then on either side will be a 6-foot ramp down. So the pedestrians have the easy part. They don't really have to go up and down grades for ADA accommodations. They're pretty much staying at the same grade as the vehicles, I think. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think expand that conversation about ADA compliance. Everything that we would propose with this planning study needs to meet, if we're securing state or federal money, needs to meet ADA requirements. So at every crosswalk, we have the ramps, and the ramps need to comply with standards, detectable warning fields, all of that. That would be the push buttons at signalized intersections. All of that would be brought up to present day standards. Yes, sir.
Okay, this, I'm trying to get up to speed on this. We had something that come through about, what, 5 years ago when we were designing, we were gonna design, the curbing and whatnot, and, the state had given the town money to do it. And nothing had happened, so it just died, okay? So where are we with this? You still have the $200,000 somewhere? Okay, that's what we're gonna use for the actual design for the curbing, right?
Okay, so I don't think it died. I think that was the project that got put on hold when this project started. So you had mentioned 200,000, that might be a town match on some work. But DOT they've secured about $4 million to do some of that work. So they had a picture to do the whole thing. They got the design 75% complete. And they parked it, they put it on the shelf because of this project. And since, assuming this project has support, they were gonna spend that $4 million on a different, I'll say a different part. They're gonna spend it on the same project, but a different piece of it, and they're only doing the upper end from Madawaska up to the hospital.
Okay, so the $200,000 is in there somewhere.
I can't speak for the town, but I believe it is, and if it doesn't get used for that project, I would assume it could be secured for this project moving forward. Because there will be a town match for this project.
Okay.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Question, it might be a stupid one, but with the raised sidewalks, is that gonna be an impediment to getting it plowed? Maybe someone else had asked that before. I can just figure seeing the plow going down and bang, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So, yes, it could be an impediment, but through education on how to plow those properly, it will be fine. There's also the challenge, so that's the vertical challenge of plowing. We also are proposing curb extensions or bump outs where the curb comes in tighter, maybe at the end of a parking stall, things like that. Plowing those can be challenging for drivers as well. So it's an education on how to do it properly. But it's been done successfully in other communities. You actually have bump outs on your main street here today. We don't have the vertical element.
Because everybody, where I live up where that little Dogtown Road comes with that little White House there in the corner. So, it's great the way you guys plow. I mean, nobody tells me you do a great job. I'm here to tell you to do a great job. So.
Well, the goal is for that to continue. Yes, sir.
Tonight, where can we see these pictures?
These have been made available. The roll plans haven't, but these cut sheets have been made available to town. We certainly can make the roll plans available. We'd love to leave the roll plans behind with the town. But I think they can post it online for access.
Put on the town website.
Yeah. Town website.
Yeah.
And this is just step one. I think this is just step one in the process. So there's gonna be, assuming the project moves forward and there's support. The support needs to be at 3 levels. It needs to be with your local town officials, but with the public, and obviously with DOT. If you can get all 3 and support the project with the correct direction to go in, and it may be they like 75% of this, but 25, let's not go there. That's fine too. So you can plug and play and pick and choose what the final recommendation should be. But assuming that goes forward, there's a lot more process in play. Jared mentioned it's 4 years. I think it's 3 to 5 is probably more realistic, and there's still a big design element and a public process element to fine tune this before you actually see dirt moving on a project like this. Yes, ma'am.
About realigning Crosby Street. I don't feel as though adding a 4-way intersection next to the railroad track would be improving safety. I feel keeping Crosby Street where it is, making that green space where you're going to acquire that property and do whatever with it. The way it is now, I believe, is a good way to keep it safer than moving it Because you add four-way intersection, you're asking people to watch the railroad tracks, the other street, this street, plus that's a high pedestrian bike riding area. My suggestion is to leave it alone. I understand up where Somerset Avenue and Easy Street. I understand moving that only because I don't really even agree with that, but the 4 lanes of Somerset Avenue do not line up with the 2 lanes of Easy Street. But Easy Street is not a high traffic area. It's basically just for Chimbrow and a few residents there. So to move that, I feel it's more money than it would be worth on either ones.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'd like to say, first of all, overall, I love this whole concept. It's really exciting to think about improving the safety and the appearance of our community and hopefully driving in some more economic development. Couple questions. First one, just a clarifying question about the bike access. You mentioned, I think shoulders. Would there be like painted bike lanes, designated bike lanes?
Yeah, so they'd have the stencils on there for bike lanes in the shoulders. 5 foot wide shoulder, it wouldn't necessarily be its own lane, but it's basically next to the travel lane before the curbing. You would have stencils put down to show a bike lane. And that would be for both directions for the limits. In the town center area where I mentioned the shoulders get tighter, that's where we provide that multi-use pass so they can go off the road and the bikes can use that. If it's an experienced biker that likes to go vehicle speeds and they don't want to use that multi-use path, we will put shared lane stenciling on the travel lanes so the vehicles know that bikes can share the lane with them in those narrow shoulder areas, lower speed, narrow shoulders.
The other question may be more directed towards Jacob, but in terms of the funding for the entire project, once the construction phase of it's completed, and we're looking at the beautification aspects, the landscaping, potential lighting, all of that, is there a fund in place going for it? Presumably that's going to be a cost to the town going forward.
Yeah, Jared's gonna make that.
That's the $1 million question, and that's a good question. What we like about this program within the Department of Transportation is this actually allows us to incorporate everything all at once. It's like a one and done. So the architectural lighting, which is a safety improvement, is something that we would include in the construction process. And with regards to the funding structure of that, you know, with the bipartisan infrastructure law, we're allowed to use up to 80% of federal funding. So our match ratio is, you know, for every $1 that the municipality will invest, Maine DOT will invest $1 of state funds, and we'll bring $8 of federal funds. So it's a 1-to-9 ratio of investment. It makes these types of investments for municipalities much more, I think, easy, doable lift, and it allows us at the department some ability to leverage those federal funds. And, you know, with, you know, regards to the sort of current seniority of our Senate delegation, we have a very good track record on delivering these. So we do it all at once.
You're calling it one and done. Why are you leaving the concrete under the road on the north? Gonna have to come out someday.
That's maybe a question for Randy, but I just don't know if we've got that's a separate line item in the budget, and I'll have Randy answer that one.
Well, I guess like kind of a short answer to that question is this $4 million it's a current congressionally designated spending. That money expires come September of 2025 if we don't have it advertised and put a project out there. We were trying to, when we originally designed the larger project where we were just working on the roadway, we were trying to make the best use of what we could for the money.
knowing that we could make an improvement that would last for, you know, probably 20 years or better. We're just looking at trying to turn that around, take advantage of that money, because come September 2025, if we don't have a project advertised, that goes back into the big pot of money and we won't see it. So we're trying to incorporate the safety aspects of the project. Trying to maintain what Goral and Palmer has put together here for the concept that the town's worked on, and take advantage of that funding.
In the last few years, we've had several skin coats put on here that just come up very next year.
Yeah,
It seems like that's a good way to continue.
well, we'll take some of that old pavement off of there, get it down to a solid layer, repave it, reconstruct shoulders, improve drainage, to help with that longevity.
Okay, a couple things. What about, Altoma and the sidewalk that ends at the airport road? It makes sense to take all the way to the entrance to Manson Park because there's walk on the road there. So that part I don't understand, maybe I misunderstood.
Used to.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have a sidewalk all the way to the entrance of the park. And the other thing is the idea, build it and they will come as far as stimulating business growth here. This is wonderful for us who live here, it'll be lovely, but is there any, you know, I know it's a gamble as far as will businesses actually be downtown?
That's exactly it. That's the hope and the desire. Build it and they will come. Build it so it's appealing, aesthetically nice looking. And it's been proven in other communities when they do that, that the businesses will want to be there. Can we guarantee it? We cannot. We can, but if we can put this in place, I think you will have, hopefully, you will agree that it will be a better downtown, a better Main Street, and more appealing for businesses to come and stay there. That's the desire, and we're probably mixed use, you know, not just businesses, but maybe multi-story where you can have apartments on the upper floor. Where every community is dying for affordable housing and places to stay. So we cannot guarantee it. But we do live off the adage of building, they will come. Yes, ma'am.
Just one question, you're speaking about housing possibly on Main Street. We're working along the same lines. What about parallel parking? In the residential areas, on this side of the railroad tracks, as well as the Main Street, it looks like perhaps we're losing parallel parking opportunity.
Yeah, it's certainly on the table. Through our stakeholder discussions, we did not identify a need for parallel parking on Main Street this side of the railroad tracks, or past the church and the Puritan Center on the other side. So it just wasn't identified to us as a need. So if there is an identified need, I'd encourage you to communicate that with Jacob, with the town manager. And okay. So we'd love to know where that need might be, the locations of that. And we can certainly take a look at that. The lady in the front.
Plan looks very appealing. My question is, what's the budget going to be for the town to maintain the trees, the grass lines, the traffic separators, etc.?
Yeah, I think that was maybe a leading question over here as well. So I don't know if I want to give the floor to any on the panel here. Probably not the best suited to answer, but yours is after it's built, what is our maintenance cost looking like? I'll speak for the infrastructure. You're gonna have sidewalks, you have sidewalks today, you're gonna need to maintain those sidewalks, so plowing operations, and you're gonna have some wider sidewalks through your Main Street as well. So I think that you have a public works department, they're gonna be responsible for maintaining the sidewalks right out of the gate. I would assume with the landscaping, there's gonna be a landscape cost component to that. So, and in terms of lighting costs, going to use LED fixtures. So in terms of, you know, monthly charges, they should be a lot smaller than they were in the past. So
I would just offer with regard to the landscaping and the big green esplanades that you see. We've talked about, of course, low maintenance landscaping, clover lawn, that It doesn't require, nearly as much mowing and maintenance as like a regular front yard lawn that you might expect to see. And then any plantings would be native plantings that require very little water, irrigation, or pruning, clipping. So most of the maintenance, I think, would be with the sidewalk, kind of what's typical, what's there today, lighting, kind of all in line with typical maintenance that you would see today in town.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe some of this question's already been asked, but I guess I can't hear the answer. I think it's a great project, but I have heard no mention of underground storm drains, sewer, water upgrades. Or do we wait 3 months down the road after finish and they start digging it up and fix it?
No, we don't wait. A lot of comments there. So first I'll start off by saying this project, the non-DOT section, so not from Industrial Park Road up to Madawaska Ave. This project, we're proposing to remove the slab. It's full depth reconstruction. It's gonna be new gravel, new pavements, new curbing, and all new drainage. The drainage is all gonna be underground. Even if you get down by McCarty Road, down by Rich's Pizza, you'll see as you go down the hill, there's a ditch and a sidewalk. That ditch is going away. We're gonna curb it, put everything underground. So this project includes the costs to replace your drainage system. So water and sewer, the way it works is on these types of transportation projects, those are water and sewer districts are private entities. You cannot use any federal money, transportation money for improvements to the utilities. However, we've been working with the town and the utility district to understand what's going on. It's more than likely that we understand that for the most part, the mains, the water main and the, I can't even state that. One of the two mains is quite old, but they haven't had a ton of issues with the two mains. It's the service that's coming off the main to people's houses. They're very old, and at a minimum, all those services should be replaced to the right of way on each side of the street. When this project is built, there will be a 5-year moratorium. What that means is once the project's built, there is no going in and ripping up this road for 5 years for utility improvements or things like that. So if they're gonna invest this kind of money on this project, they want to make sure the utilities are brought up to standards before they do this. So that conversation's ongoing and will continue. I think it's a great question, but this project will do all new drainage. All right, we're gonna start over here. All right, yes, ma'am.
I'm curious, how do you approach a project like this in terms of daily living of everything else? You just started south and go north, or do you do it in clumps? Do you stop for the winter? And is there any plan? Would there be a point person who someone in town could call to say, what are you doing in 3 months, or when are you going to be on my lot? That kind of thing.
Great questions. Easy answer. They do stop in the winter. Assuming we still have winters, they will stop construction. The second question about, do you have a point person? The answer is absolutely yes. If a project like this goes to construction, there'll be what we call a resident engineer. He's a lead inspector. So there'll be construction going on with a contractor. DOT will have eyes watching over what they're doing and inspecting their work. There will be a lead inspector, and he will have direct and regular communication with the town and with the abutters that live on the project. They'll get to know that person. If they have questions, they go see that person. The designers will also be there on the side. If there's design questions or homeowner questions on the design, they'll be involved. So there will be a line of communication. And then do they start on one end and go to the other end? We typically don't, the design plans won't dictate to the contractor how to do it unless we feel they need to do it a certain way. More than likely, they'll maintain traffic while they're building it. So they might have flaggers. They'll maintain one lane of alternating traffic while they're working in the other travel lanes. They might build one side of the road while maintaining traffic on the other side. Once that side's built, they move the traffic to that side. But they might do it block to block. It's up to them. It's a little more challenging on this project because they got to go down and get that concrete slab out. So that slab they're 10-foot wide pieces of slab, 2 of them, 1 in each travel lane. So, and they're 40 feet long. So we don't know what the condition is and how easy it is going to be to take those out. But that will be the challenge of getting the base out first before they start doing it. So
Just one more thing.
go ahead.
Hospital. Of course, we've thought of this, but is there a plan to make sure there's always emergency access from both sides of the hospital?
Yes, I think it's a great question. We have police chief here, and I think through the DOT design project as well as this project, assuming it moves forward, it's gonna be a lot of coordination with emergency services, but the hospital being there will be really important. So that they and emergency responders understand how this might work and operate.
Thank you.
Gentleman in the back.
Do we know what the time frame is that finish?
This feels to me like a 2-year construction project. It's 2 miles in length, but there's a lot to it. And that's just Main Street, and you have all these side streets. So I think all in, probably 3 miles of roadway work, but it's urban roadway work. It's got sidewalks and granite curbing and closed drainage. It's complicated stuff. So I don't think a contractor could do it in a season. You know, if somebody like Chimbro stepped in, sure, you know, they could do amazing things. I don't know if they would be interested in a project like this. So, and so my gut tells me it's probably a 2-year project. Randy, I don't know if you have thoughts on that. Yeah, Randy agrees. All right. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say all of the elements that you put into the design to slow traffic coming into town, excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good. All right. Yes, sir.
You mentioned granite curbing. I noted in Searsport where they're doing a similar job, that they did granite curbing right in town, and then they went to reinforced concrete. Is that something you, when you design this thing, that you make up your mind what you're gonna do, or?
We absolutely could do that. Right now, we're proposing granite from start to finish.
Yeah.
And if it goes through and is funded and supported by the state and federal government, more power to you. So, but yes, that's a cost saving opportunity if we find the costs are too high and want to keep the cost down. Nick had that graphic, one of the first graphics, when you kind of look at the core of the project. I'll try to get to it here real quick. For me, the core of the project is your downtown area. It's really the railroad tracks to Somerset Ave. That's your downtown village area. So if any place you want to do the higher features would be there. We're talking about curbing, and maybe it extends to MCI on the south side, and maybe we extend it to Madawaska Ave or to at least Fast Cook Street on the north, and then maybe transition to a different curb type. And it's the slip form concrete is a curb type that it's not as rugged as the granite, but it holds up better than bituminous. I would also say on that comment, this core village area, we may focus our attention, if costs are an issue, focus our attention to make sure we have higher levels of landscaping in that core circle, that dashed red circle, and higher levels of pedestrian scale lighting. And as we go outside of the town, maybe those esplanades start to drop off. Maybe we have less landscaping, less lighting, those types of elements, or lower cost lighting fixtures. So I do think there's that theme, and we really want, if we're going to do that, we want to keep their downtown center our focus point.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right. Any other questions?
I just wanted to offer this for an analogy. When you were talking about raised sidewalks, if any of you have driven down and around Colby College within the last, I'd say, maybe 5 or 6 years, they have a series of raised sidewalks. And it is a gradated, it isn't like a speed bump where you boom, 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 boom. No, it's a very gradated scenario. I, for one, am all for that. I also think it will be a detractor from our continual drag strip out front here. It will cause people to slow down. In regards to snow plowing, I mean, the snow plowers will be aware, or at least think that they would be aware of those raised sidewalks. So, you know, the opposing thoughts are all fine and good, but I personally think it's a wonderful idea. I hope it definitely goes through, and I hope I live long enough. I say that because I'm the second house on the right past the campus. So I'm very, very, very well aware. My house is 125 plus years old. The sewer lines have never been replaced up front. When I was born, it was a cement slab all the way down, you know, a 6, 8 foot slab. Boom, 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 and it's still there. How many layers of asphalt have been put on top of that puppy over the years? Unbelievable.
Yep.
My curbing has disappeared. Thank you.
You're welcome. The idea of the raised crosswalks is to drive, you should be able to drive comfortably 15 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, 25 maybe. But if you're going over the speed limit, it's gonna be very uncomfortable for you. You'll do it once, not do it again.
What does that do to the cops and the fire trucks having to go through and get places fast? They Didn't that impact safety?
It certainly could, and those will be conversations that we would have with fire and rescue if the project moves forward.
Let's have less of them.
Well, you mentioned have less of them, and while some would agree with that statement, they work best when they're in a series. Because if you have less of them, they'll slow down for the first one and then they'll crank it coming out of that. But if you have it in a series where they really can't accelerate between them, it keeps more of a steady pace. So there is a rhythm to them, but I understand your comment. Any other questions? All right. Anything else from? We thank everyone for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it.